Our next speaker is Ron Lee. Ron is from Stanford University, and he will be talking about machine learning enabled systems for delivering care to critically ill patients.
Thanks, Russ. Thank you to the organizers for this conference, and thanks to all the audience members who are joining us today in this time of unprecedented crisis. My name is Ron. I'm an inpatient physician at Stanford Hospital, and I take care of hospitalized patients with COVID-19. I also work closely with the hospital and the School of Medicine to enable the use of AI to help address the most pressing clinical and operational problems that our healthcare system faces. Today, I'd like to share some work we are doing to use AI to help deliver care to our sickest patients with COVID-19. Before I get into the AI work, I'd like to start by just framing the problem. The reality is that there are clusters of COVID throughout the country, and the numbers today reported over 200,000 cases and over 4,000 deaths. The consequence of these rapidly growing numbers is the severe strain that's being placed on our country's healthcare systems. Resources are being drained, staff are under immense amounts of pressure and stress, and we are unfortunately already seeing healthcare workers getting ill, with some who have already died. We need to fundamentally rethink the systems of care to meet the unique challenges we face with this pandemic. We are in a war, and we need a wartime strategy. The key point I'd like to make here is that while we think about the individual goals of preventing outbreaks, delivering high quality care, and keeping healthcare workers safe, we have to recognize that these goals are actually all interdependent. So the solutions we develop to control the COVID-19 pandemic will have to consider this interdependency and the complexity that comes with it. I'd like to get a bit more specific when we say that healthcare is complex, because what we really mean is that healthcare is delivered via complex systems, and we can build better systems to deliver better care. I think this framing is important because it allows us to define the space in which we develop AI solutions. Traditionally, we mostly think of AI as synonymous with machine learning. But I think that for AI to truly drive solutions for the most pressing problems like the COVID-19 pandemic, we have to think about how to develop entire systems, including the structures, the processes, and patterns of care delivery that can be enabled by machine learning models. Here's an example of a process that we are using at Stanford Medicine to do this. We start by actually pretending that AI doesn't even exist, because we focus solely on understanding the problem that we are trying to solve. We also ensure that the process is highly multidisciplinary and iterative. The work doesn't end once the solution is implemented. In fact, it is only the beginning. Here's one problem that we face when managing patients who are hospitalized with COVID-19. Most patients admitted to the hospital are not actually critically ill in the beginning, and they can be managed in standard hospital isolation wards. If they become sicker, they will have to be moved into the intensive care unit or ICU. We worry about this population because, one, we're learning that many of these patients actually become sick very quickly. We also have a constraint around the availability of ICU resources. And we also are learning that when we perform critical procedures like intubation, mechanical ventilation, these procedures aerosolize particles in uncontrolled settings, and that actually places healthcare workers at very high risk of becoming infected. So we came up with the problem statement of how can we identify sick patients early before they emergently need critical care. We started by using principles from process improvement to more deeply understand the current state. And I'd like to give special thanks to Margaret Smith for leading this work. We held focus groups and interviews with tons of sticky notes, whiteboard sessions with frontline clinicians to better understand their current processes and pain points. We then prioritized each pain point based on how frequently it occurs and also its level of impact on workflow and outcomes. We then derive from these pain points the key drivers that can enable a better system for delivering care. And this is where AI comes in. Among these key drivers, we identified the need for accurate, objective, and timely clinical assessments that need to be continuously performed over time in order to screen for at-risk patients. This is something that is currently performed manually by a limited number of trained physicians. And this is doable if we have, let's say, 20, 30 patients with COVID in our hospital, but becomes fairly difficult if we have several hundred. We recognized that this is actually a perfect task for a machine learning model to perform at scale. The model would have to predict sufficiently in advance if a patient is at risk of requiring ICU level care. And there are actually many models out there that could do this well. And we ended up choosing one developed by our electronic health record or EHR vendor because it's already conveniently integrated into our EHR and can drive the workflows that we need. Based on validation studies done by the vendor, it performs reasonably well in predicting the outcomes of interest. And the initial analyses that the vendor has done, as well as us and our team at Stanford, suggest similar performance on COVID-19 patients. And we are actively validating as we have more patients at Stanford with COVID-19. In addition to validating the model in terms of prediction accuracy, I'd like to stress the importance of validating also the usefulness of the model output in enabling the workflows that we are designing. This is being done in design sessions that we are holding with frontline clinicians at Stanford. Here's an example of a digital interface in the EHR. I'd like to thank the Stanford Healthcare Technology and Digital Solutions team for rapidly designing and building this out. So let me point a couple of features here that I think are interesting. One, you see a score, so it's 61 right here, that it ranges from 0 to 100. So this score is calculated by the prediction model, and it indicates the patient's level of risk of becoming very ill and needing ICU level care. And this score is actually updated every 15 minutes based on the most recent clinical data. What you don't see that's blurred out here is actually also a section that shows the factors or the model features that most strongly contributes to this score at this time. The other thing is this score trend line. And I'd like to point out that, so this is actually from a COVID patient in our hospital. And we noticed during these design sessions that there is a potential importance of not just the absolute value of the score, but also the rate of change. And you can see that in the beginning, the score is fairly low, and then it jumps from about 30 to 50. And you can imagine that is more important than just knowing what the score is at any given time if it's stable, because that can trigger certain workflows that are important for early detection and intervention. And we can also leverage the other IT capabilities we have available at our hospital to deliver this to clinicians. So armed with this prediction model, with information that is objective, reliably updated, and made available to not just the physician, but the entire clinical team, we can now ask, what new structures, processes, and patterns of care can we enable? What new roles, team dynamics, and cultural changes around care can emerge from a system that is enabled by AI? We are excited to find out, as we are actively working on designing and implementing such a system to fight the COVID-19 pandemic at Stanford Medicine. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ron, and thanks for your work.